Welcome to Time for Health. I'm your host, Rachel Fall, and we're very glad you've joined us. We share something every time that hopefully will be helpful to you and people that you know to share the information with them. But as always, I'm not real sure it really pertains to this particular episode, but don't necessarily use any of our information on here for medical advice. You're always going to want to talk to your doctor first. I always have to throw that disclaimer out there. But today we're talking about scams, not necessarily something you necessarily need to talk to your physician about all the time. But I have Detective Sergeant Carpenter. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for being here from Port Clinton Police Department.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Thank you for being here.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
We are on the Task Force on Aging together, and scams sometimes come up. And it's not necessarily just regarding the elderly, although
They're the primary target usually.
a lot.
Yes.
Okay, a lot of them kind of do target that. So when I talk about scams, like what are some of the scams that are out there, I guess?
Well, just recently we had the one that keeps coming around is the grandchild or grandkid scam or bail scam. The elderly will get a call from somebody pretending to be a grandchild, maybe from a different state, saying that they've been arrested or they have financial problems and they need money immediately. We just received a call last week from, I believe she was 92, the victim, and luckily she thought ahead to call us before sending any money to anybody. She was scared. A lot of times they use scare tactics. They're gonna lock me up, throw away the key unless you send money now. And that's one that keeps rearing its ugly head every so often, and they'll change it up a little bit. There's the lottery scams.
Okay.
You get something, either an email, a posting, or a phone call. You've won this prize, but in order to receive it, you need to deposit X amount of money into this account, or go get prepaid gift cards. We had one where they wanted like $750 worth of iTunes cards.
Wow.
So for most people, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
For the elderly, it's a generation that's very trustworthy,
Yeah.
and they don't know. But luckily, with programs like this, and just them talking to family members, friends, they're starting to question things more often.
Now, the grandparent one, I've heard that they get real sneaky about it, and they can, like, if a person happens to have a Facebook page, and your grandkid goes by the nickname of Snooky, that they'll be like, "Hey, Grandma, it's Snooky." Like, they'll do a little homework.
Oh yes,
to really be convincing.
They're very good at what they do. There's so much of our information out there in the electronic world, with public records. We have banking statements, criminal record history, property taxes, you can get on the auditor's website and look up any address and
see who
bring up who owns it and see exactly how much they paid for it.
Gotcha.
Yes,
So
and social media is nice. It's good that they can communicate with family out of state, but a lot of times you're throwing a lot of personal information out there, and it can be dangerous.
And you wouldn't even think
No.
they would use it that way, but unfortunately these not very nice people are awfully smart.
Yes, they are.
So the grandparent lottery, are there other common ones that you see?
Unfortunately, we have the dating scam. We've had several investigations where the victim is targeted, both male and female, by somebody online. They pretend to be boyfriend, girlfriend. A lot of times they'll even say they're from another country and they need money to get over here to start a life with them. And they send money. There are times where we've talked to them and tried to explain to them this is a scam.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of the elderly are single, they're lonely, and they're willing to spend that money. And that's the bad part of it, is we just can't get them to stop. It's their money,
Right.
and it's some type of relation,
Right.
and they're willing to go with it.
Wow. So they contact by all different phone
Yes.
Email.
Social media. They've got stuff just out of the blue. They're very good at what they do. They can search. They'll see what you're searching.
Oh.
A lot of times somebody will get on a dating
Sure.
site. They have a way of monitoring that and making contact. If I knew exactly how they would do it, I would be monitoring it myself. But
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of times law enforcement we're always a reactionary to what's
Right.
going on, and we have to figure it out before we can attack it and stop it.
Right. Okay.
And then they just figure another way.
Are there many door-to-door scams?
Those are more or less the like home improvement or the
yeah, I've seen
pressure
videos of
sales
that,
for insurance or loans, home loans, trying to clear your credit. Several years ago, when I first became a detective, we had a company that went around and targeted several houses in town. It was right after one of the bad storms. It was putting roofs on. They were doing shoddy
Is it after
work.
hail?
Yes.
A hailstorm. I kind of
Yes.
do remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They started just doing kind of some shoddy work, some questionable work, and then they were just taking the money and not doing anything. We were able to, that particular one, we were able to
That's
prosecute
a little
that one.
easier to.
Yes.
But that, I mean,
It's a little more brazen to have a face-to-face.
Yeah.
The potential for us to catch them is higher.
Right.
That's why a lot of times it's just over social media,
Okay.
electronically.
it's a lot
Yes.
handier these days. So most of these people are strangers. I mean, certainly.
For the majority, yes, they
Yeah.
are. There are cases of elderly exploitation that come from within
Right.
the family.
Okay.
You've got a grandchild, sometimes a child, spouse that can
Right.
take advantage
Kind of
of you.
manipulate a
Yes.
person. Okay. Is that considered a scam? I don't know. I didn't think of that when I was coming up with the topic for the show. It's not, it's more like
Well,
exploitation.
I guess, yeah, it's more of an exploitation, but I suppose it depends on what the story was that, say, a
a-
grandchild tells a grandmother or grandfather why
Right.
they needed the money.
Right.
And
So
they continue to do it.
most of the time.
Yes.
How many happen around here? Or like, I don't know if you measure it every month, every year, like how many scams have been reported around here?
We would never have an accurate account because not everybody reports
heavens,
it.
no, I bet
It's a generation they're an honorable generation, and a lot of times they're embarrassed to say that they have been duped or scammed out of money. So we don't have an accurate, it's not a lot. I just did the statistics for the last 2 years, and this isn't just for fraud. This is all offenses involving anybody the age of 65 and above.
Okay.
2018 to 2019, we had 142 offense reports
Okay.
involving the elderly.
Okay. Do you think they're increasing
I think they're-
scams in particular?
I think we're receiving more phone calls, and luckily we're receiving more phone calls before they send the money, which is fantastic. Because we always tell them, call and ask somebody.
Would that be your message to
Yes.
everybody out there? Just call us first.
Yes.
Because what are the odds that once it's reported, you get money back and you arrest the bad guys?
It's very seldom that you get money back, especially the ones that are done overseas. They're almost impossible to track, and if you do purchase, like a lot of times it's the gift cards, it's the prepaid
Yeah.
gift cards or Amazon cards, iTunes
Yeah.
cards, those are almost impossible to track. Same with a wire. We might be able to determine where it went. A lot of times it's outside the United States, and the amount of money that is being scammed,
Why do they
the
want
federal government
yeah.
won't track it.
No. What do they do with iTunes cards or Amazon cards or?
They can be used as cash. They'll go and buy them,
Okay.
and what they'll do is if I'm the scammer and I contact you and you need to go to the Walmart and buy $500 worth of iTunes cards, contact me back and give me the numbers off of the back. When you buy a card, there's a
Like a SKU on the
scratch
back?
off on the
Oh,
back,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there's an authorization number.
Okay.
Once I have that, it's my money, and I'm immediately going to use that to purchase something or get cash.
Gotcha.
And that's what it is the victim actually has the card in hand, but they're giving them the account number off of the back of the card, and they're
essentially
activating.
use the card,
Yes.
and the card is then useless because
Yes.
they've used it. Well, that's not very nice either.
No, it's not.
So you talked about how seniors are typically more susceptible. It was much of what they did was on the honor system, handshake agreements, that kind of stuff. Are younger people susceptible, or?
Yes, they're starting. I just saw an article, and I don't remember. I apologize. I don't remember where I read it, but there was a statistic: 25 to 35 is on the increase.
Really?
Yes. I would guess to say it's a generation that does everything electronically.
Yeah.
So they're to them that's more common and
Right.
wouldn't question it as much as you or I or the elderly.
Okay.
Because that's not how we typically conduct business.
Right. Yeah. So it wouldn't seem strange to them that somebody would contact them.
And a lot of the times it's something that they're hoping is true.
Sure.
You know,
I hope
student
I win a
loans.
lottery somewhere.
Another one of the scams is a student loan scam. You pay off your student loans quicker or eliminate some type of bad credit. Those are all scams, and they'll target kids that are in school,
Gotcha.
people that have the debt, or the elderly who are easily swayed
Right.
because of their honesty and
Right.
their trustworthiness.
Okay, interesting. So it's not necessarily just the elderly who are susceptible.
No, we've had all ranges, especially the dating
sure.
scam. We've seen all age ranges
Like
there.
what's an amount that they're asking for usually? Like I know we've had a couple of cases that we talked about on the task force. It's like tens of thousands of dollars.
There are times, and I think they feel out the victim to see how much they have and how much they're willing. A lot of times they'll say, "Can you send me $10,000? No, I don't have that much. Okay, can you send me $5,000? Yes. Or a lot of times they'll even disclose, I don't get my Social Security check until this date, which is normally this amount of money. I have, a disability check that I get that's in this amount. And once they figure that out, then they just start hitting them up, usually monthly.
At the right time. Oh, gosh.
Yes.
All right. We're going to hold on to that thought, and we are going to take a break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. We're talking about scams with Detective Sergeant Carpenter. So it happens to all ages.
Yes, it does.
Predominantly those
The
over the
elderly.
age of 60, just a little bit more susceptible, maybe not as comfortable with email and phones and technology to know kind of what's what. But we kind of mentioned briefly in the first half about, if people would just call you guys first. So they don't necessarily call 911. How do they get a hold of you to ask?
They can call the business line, 734-3121.
Okay.
Our dispatchers are very educated in this. If they can't answer the question, they'll contact one of the officers or one of the Detective Timmons or myself
Okay.
and go, hey, I don't know how to answer this. And you don't always have to call the law enforcement. Call a family member.
Okay, sure.
The elderly are a lot of times involved with church organizations or civic organizations. Call somebody along those lines. Just call somebody.
Ask somebody first.
I've talked to workers at Walmart with, that come in there for money order, and they've even said they've tried to explain to the person, this is probably a scam. You really don't want to do this, and they'll do it anyway. So
That's a fine line,
Yes,
and
it
I
is.
commend them for doing
Yes.
that, because somebody might be like, listen, my
Yeah.
money, but
Uh-huh.
you're throwing it away. If you want to give it away, give it to us.
And that's all we say is just take the time to stop, and even take time to think about it yourselves. One of the ploys is they'll pressure you. And not to talk bad about a used car salesman.
Right.
That's usually the example that they give is now.
Right.
Just back off a minute. If you feel like you're being pressured, you're being pressured for a reason because they're trying to take advantage of you or get something out of you that you're not willing to give up. So just tell them no. And a lot of times with the elderly, it's hard for them, especially if they're talking to somebody on the phone, to just hang up because that would be rude. That would be rude, and they don't do that. And we tried to explain to them, just tell them, no, just call me back in a couple days and hang up the phone.
Sleep on it, like all decisions, especially when you're dealing with money and kind of large amounts of money too. Sleep on it.
Take the time to think about it. Ask somebody, and if it's a situation where it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. So when they call you, they can just kind of run something by you if they haven't done anything. And that's kind of it at that point because there hasn't been a loss. They're not out anything. But we're more than happy to take their phone call, explain to them what's going on. And a lot of times, especially if they think they have given information or we believe that they have and they're not telling us, we can offer them some assistance by getting them in contact with filing a complaint with the Ohio Attorney General's office or the Federal Trade Commission. We have a lot of pamphlets and handouts that we can give them. Somebody that has their identity stolen, we have a pamphlet we can give them, a whole booklet that tells them exactly what they can do. What you need to do.
Yes.
I've had that happen. That is real bad.
Yes.
So what if they didn't sleep on it and they did send money, give money, do something like that, and hopefully they will call you because I bet there are a fair number of people that don't. They're just
they just don't call it. And there are people that a short time later will figure it out and go, or they didn't receive something that was promised to them, and now they're starting to realize, okay, this really isn't true. As long as the money has come from a bank account, something that if it's reported early enough, they can notify the bank, file an affidavit of unauthorized activity, or it's fraudulent activity. Sometimes the bank can stop that or stop the check. The prepaid cards, the money wires, a lot of that can't be tracked.
Right.
And that's why the scammers will usually ask for that as some type of payment.
Gotcha.
It's hard to trace and hard to get back.
Should they still report it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The reason for reporting it, a lot of the victims will go, well, what's the sense if I can't get my money back?
Yeah.
Because it creates a database, and that's why we refer to them to the Ohio Attorney General's office and the Federal Trade Commission, because they'll start to, as with any investigation, I keep referring to it as a puzzle, and it's a matter of putting the pieces together. If the victims keep reporting this to, say, the Ohio Attorney General's office, elderly fraud or scam, they can start looking and comparing. This is very similar to this case, which is very similar to this case.
Gotcha.
And they can now start an investigation instead of having a bunch of arbitrary allegations.
Right.
They can start piecing together, oh, these were contacted by somebody named this name through this type of social media, and start an investigation.
Gotcha. So if it's something from a bank account or a check or something, can they also contact the bank if they... They
contact the bank, and usually the bank will tell them you need a police report.
Okay.
And they'll contact us. And the banks work very well with us. The banks are, as you know, the banks are now mandated reporters. Where in the past, a lot of times we were getting anonymous phone calls of what they thought was suspicious activity or somebody being exploited. Now the banks can tell us without any repercussions.
And I'm sure they probably run into the situation where somebody comes in and wants to send a large check somewhere, and they try to maybe talk them out of it because they know
it's bad.
Oh, this is bad.
And we have, and we're on the same task force. There are victims out there that have been told time and time again, this is fraudulent activity. You're being taken advantage of, and they do it anyways.
Is that one of those situations where it's the same thing? They don't want to press charges or go after them, but at least it's some information and it's a piece of the puzzle that somebody can still have that information. Like, okay, they didn't want to pursue it themselves, but we know it's fraudulent activity, and it looks like a little bit like this case and a little bit like that case.
Yes, it's few and far between that they're able to, and I say they, the different entities involved are able to make an arrest. I know the IRS just recently, and that's one of the bigger scams that, and we're coming up to the end of the year, and we can talk about that later, but just recently the IRS, they were able to make some type of arrest or charges through an investigation of theirs, which stemmed back, it was a call center out of India where they were targeting mostly the elderly, and they were using the pressure tactics and the gift cards. They were able to track that back. So there are times that
Right.
there's one for the good guys that we do catch them.
It just takes a long time.
Yes.
A couple of things. If they do it by phone, is there any pattern to what the phone number is? Because I know there's a difference between telemarketers and scams. But I know telemarketers, the numbers are, I feel like I know. It's a 419 number or a local number or a somewhat familiar number. Even sometimes it's your own number, isn't it?
Yes. And the scammers were the ones that actually started using spoof numbers.
Okay.
And a lot of times, I talked about the IRS, they'll actually call you and put in they'll go on the IRS website, find an official phone number, put that in as a fake caller ID, so when you answer the phone,
looks like the IRS is calling.
And they'll say, this is the IRS agent, John Smith, you owe taxes. If you have questions about this, go to the website and confirm the phone number. It's all a scam. So you can't rely on caller ID as being accurate because they're spoofing it. Yes, and I too have received phone calls from myself. Yeah, telemarketers.
You're like, I'm guessing this
local numbers. Yeah, they just look at the area code that you're calling from.
So so you really have to be even more, because sometimes I'd be like, it's a out of area code or something. Well, not necessarily anymore.
And you know what? If you don't know the number, you don't recognize it, and if it's a cell phone, don't answer it. Let it roll to voicemail, because if you don't get a voicemail, it was either a telemarketer or it was a scammer.
Yeah, so either way, you're okay.
Yep.
The other thing I have heard people talk about was if somebody is talking to somebody on the phone, like in a dating scam, or just trying to talk to the person to get them, they ask questions about, the security questions that you always have to come up with for banking or whatever you do online, like mother's maiden name and the first street you lived on and all that kind of stuff, that they kind of throw those into the conversations?
Yes. Everything nowadays wants a password. Mm-hmm. So we tried to keep, and I say we, people in general, try to keep things as simple as possible.
Right.
A lot of times we'll use something that is familiar to us.
Right.
Dog's name, kids' names, birth dates, social security numbers, phone numbers. And they're good at soliciting that information. One of the other things that I see on posts on Facebook are the questionnaires, and and they'll go through and they'll ask you various questions, different dog names, and that is all a ploy to try to elicit those types of secret questions that can be used potentially as your password.
Well, these
they're good at what they do.
These bad people are.
Yes,
they're good at what they do. Are there things that we can do to prevent being scammed? I mean, we kind of talked about screening phone numbers, certainly.
In the United States, we have a lot of information that is easily accessible. Mm-hmm. We talked about it. The auditor's website. We have bank accounts that a lot of these organizations are trying to go electronically, so they're not mailed, but there are still hard copy mailed account information out there that we just throw away. We always recommend shredding those, tearing them up. Old credit cards, a lot of times they'll send you a credit card, here, sign up, or the checks, rip those up. Don't just leave them blank and throw them in the trash, because they'll go through the trash. They search the county websites. If you stop and try to look something up, you would probably be surprised at how much information you can find. Just by putting somebody's name into Google and hitting enter brings up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And there's not much we can do about that.
No. And as law enforcement, we for the longest time, my phone number was not listed in a phone book. Granted, we don't see phone books that often anymore.
Right.
But you could punch my name into Google and find it.
Find it.
Because I found
eventually,
it myself.
Yeah. So scanning phone numbers and just being aware of all this stuff, or just if you just have the slightest hesitation, go with it. Say
Yes.
no, hang up, sleep on it, don't
And
do
it's very
anything.
similar. I do some training for active shooter type things. And the basis of that is to not teach you how to defend yourself, but to recognize that there are people out there that want to cause harm to you. And this is really no different. Realizing that there are people out there willing to take advantage of you. Now, we as a society want to be friendly to each other,
Right.
but we also have to be cautious, so it's a fine line.
is a fine
It's a
line.
double-edged sword, we engage each other in friendly conversation,
Right.
and I then start, like you talk about,
Talking my
you have kids. What are your kids? How old are they?
Yeah.
So they were born in 19 whatever, and I'm getting information out of you without you even realizing it.
Right.
So just be aware that there are people out there, and if your gut is telling you that something's not right,
Yeah.
you have to follow it. I can attest to that through
Right.
personal experience,
All
doing
right.
this job for
Right.
20 some years.
Right. And so if we think we have been scammed, again, if it's through the bank, talk to the bank. If it's something else, you're welcome to call you guys. What if we think somebody else has been scammed? Same thing? Or does that person have to call?
The victim technically has to notify us,
Okay.
but we do get calls from friends or family.
Okay.
And a lot of times we'll go out and talk to them, especially if they're talking about large sums of money or the potential of a large loss.
Okay.
We'll go out and actually speak with the reported victim.
Okay. Awesome. Very helpful. We got like 30 seconds or a minute left. Any last minute, please remember this, or?
No, just call and ask. Please take the time and think about it. Don't rush into this. And a lot of times we wish we won the lottery, and we're willing to pay a little money
Right.
with the hopes of getting it, but just realize that you didn't. Especially if you didn't sign up for
Right.
any type of lottery
Right.
or sweepstakes or anything like that.
Awesome.
Take the time, think about it, and ask someone.
Ask someone. Thank you. Very helpful. All right, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back. And I'm back. I want to thank Corbin for being our guest today, talking about scams and how smart the bad people can be sometimes. And just to be cautious, to press pause, sleep on it, don't make any decisions. They can be awfully tricky out there. So if you want to talk to somebody in their office, the non-emergency, the office number is 419-734-3121 if you just want to run something by them. The Ohio Attorney General's website also has some information about different scams out there and different information on there. It's ohioattorneygeneral.gov. So take that information, whether it's useful for you or maybe you know somebody who could use this, be sure to pass it on. And until we meet again, I encourage you to make time for health.